Chapter 2084. Creak. The door, which had been quiet for a long time, finally made a sound. Jing and the others, who were waiting outside, immediately perked up and looked over. The door slowly opened, and a tall figure walked out. It was Rong Xiu. Behind him, Chu Liyue's figure also entered the crowd's eyes. Jing was delighted. He quickly stepped forward and looked at the two of them seriously. "How are you?" Chu Liyue smiled and said, "Taizu, don't worry. Everything is going well." The atmosphere in the surroundings suddenly became subtle. Many people secretly exchanged glances. Does this mean that she has successfully obtained Tang Ke's inheritance? After all, she had won that competition. Tang Ke had also shown that he admired her very much. It was reasonable for him to teach her everything. This also meant that in the future, she was very likely to break through to become a refining saint. With Jing, this family was probably invincible. Jing was also excited. That's good. That's good. He knew that you would definitely be able to do it. After a moment, someone in the crowd finally asked boldly, "May I ask Holy Son and Master Yu, how is Senior Tang Ke now?" They had come out. What about Tang Ke? He still had a strand of his soul left behind. Chu Liyue looked at the person who asked and smiled calmly. Senior Tang Ke said that he was already used to staying here. Now that everything is over, he will completely seal this place and never come out again. When everyone heard this, they were first surprised, then regretful. In that case, wouldn't they have no chance to come and ask for advice in the future? Rong Xiu glanced at everyone and narrowed his eyes. Family Wei is not here? Hearing what he said, Chu Liyue realized that Wei Zhe was indeed not here. That was strange. With Wei Zhe's temperament and style, he didn't seem to leave before they came out, right? Jing explained, 3 days ago, Family Wei's people came and said that there was an urgent matter that he needed to deal with personally. So he left with his people. Rong Xiu smiled. I see. It seems like the head of the Family Wei is really busy. Chu Liyue's thoughts turned, and the corners of his lips curved slightly. I originally planned to bid farewell to the head of the Family Wei, but now it seems that I shouldn't disturb you. Since that's the case, we'll leave first. If fate wills it in the future, we'll naturally meet again. He was about to leave. Many people felt empty inside when they heard this. Everyone had come here with high hopes. Now that they didn't get anything, they naturally felt that it was a pity. But if he wanted to leave, they couldn't stop him. Moreover, after this incident, Chu Liyue, who had obtained Tang Ke's inheritance, would definitely have a bright future. Building a good relationship was much better than making enemies. Immediately, many people bid farewell to them in an amiable manner, speaking and behaving very politely. Chu Liyue accepted it all and also took his leave with a chuckle. After some tossing and turning, the group finally left. Only when their figures had completely disappeared did the rest of the crowd gradually disperse. Family. In the study, Jun Jiuqing sat behind the table, looking at something. A figure hurried over. It was Iwenzhua. He went straight to the door and waved his hand at the two guards who were about to salute. You can leave first. This old man has something to say to the 9 ministers. The two guards looked at each other. Without the orders of the head of the family, they didn't dare to leave without permission. Even if this person was Iwenzhua. At this moment, Jun Jiuqing's voice came from the room. You can leave first. Hearing this, the two immediately heaved a sigh of relief, respectfully responded and left. Iwenzhua walked in and locked the door. After making sure that no one else was here, he looked at Jun Jiuqing, who was sitting in the room. A crack appeared on the calm expression on his face, as if he was trying to hold back something. Jun Jiuqing looked up and smiled. Master, why are you here at this time? Iwenzhua walked in front of him without saying a word and looked at him with a complicated gaze. His gaze was suspicious and scrutinizing. After a long while, he asked in a deep voice. Big Brother's death has something to do with you? This Big Brother was, of course, Iwenzhua. The smile on Jun Jiuqing's face faded a little, and he asked in surprise. Why do you say that, Master? I heard that before he died that day, the only person he saw was you. Iwenzhua stared at him, his fists clenched in his sleeves. 9 ministers, do you dare say that this matter has nothing to do with you? Jun Jiuqing paused and said, that's right, I did go to see the head of the family that day. Because the subordinates kept saying that he was unwilling to use medicine, I wanted to persuade him. Unfortunately, the head of the family had lost his cultivation and no longer had the will to continue living. He chose to self-destruct because he couldn't accept the fact that he had become a cripple. This kind of life made him despair, and he would rather die. Master, a person like the head of the family has been proud his whole life. It's normal for him to make such a choice, isn't it? Jun Jiuqing's tone was calm, but his words were sharp and incisive. Yi Wenzhua frowned. He had to admit that what he said was indeed very reasonable. But he still felt that something was wrong. Yi Wenzhua stared at Jun Jiuqing, as if trying to find some clues from his face. But he couldn't find anything. Yi Wenzhua suddenly realized that he couldn't see through him at all. He took a deep breath and finally asked in a deep voice. Even so, then, what do you say about the family way? Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2085. Family way? What about them? Jun Jiuqing raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he did not understand the meaning of his words. Yi Wenzhua snorted coldly and lowered his voice. You've been in contact with Wei Zhe for a long time, haven't you? Jun Jiuqing smiled, and there was a hint of devilishness in his eyes. Master, Family Yi and Family Wei have always been in contact. Now that I'm the head of the family, isn't it normal for me to be in contact with Wei Zhe? You clearly know that's not what I mean. Yi Wenzhua took a deep breath. Others may not know, but I do. That 10,000 Peaks halberd clearly belongs to Family Yi. There are no more than 3 people in the entire Divine Ruins who know about this. But now, the 10,000 Peaks halberd has appeared in Wei Zhe's hands out of the blue. Other than you, who else can quietly take away the 10,000 Peaks halberd? If anyone else was here and heard this, they would definitely be greatly shocked. Everyone thought that Family Yi only had one sacred artifact, which was Yi Wentao's Great Azure Sun Axe. But in reality, the 10,000 Peaks halberd had belonged to them thousands of years ago. It was just that Yi Wentao had always kept a low profile when it came to such matters, so he deliberately concealed the existence of the 10,000 Peaks halberd. Yi Wenzhua only knew about it because he was Yi Wentao's younger brother. Recently, the matter of Tang Ke's tomb in the rocky forest had caused a great uproar, and news of the 10,000 Peaks halberd had already spread. In the rocky forest, in order to try to open Tang Ke's tomb, Wei Zhe had taken out the 10,000 Peaks halberd. Unfortunately, it had not succeeded, and in the end, the 10,000 Peaks halberd had recognized Rong Xiu as its master. The latter was the most important point. Now, the 10,000 Peaks halberd has fallen into Rong Xiu's hands and has become his. Are you satisfied? But they didn't even have the right to make a fuss. This time, they had really suffered a loss. Jun Jiuqing's expression became much calmer. To tell you the truth, the 10,000 Peaks halberd was lent to Wei Zhe temporarily. But at that time, he only said that he wanted to borrow a sacred weapon forged by Tang Ke back then to open Tang Ke's tomb and that he would return it after using it. I didn't expect the things that happened after that. You actually lent out such an important thing so easily? Yi Wentao asked in disbelief. Something seemed to be surging wildly in his chest. The Sun Great Axe has already been taken by Shengguanyu. Now, even the Myriad Peaks halberd has become Rong Xiu's. Jiuqing, what are you thinking? Jun Jiuqing looked at him calmly. Master, allow me to remind you that it's a sacred weapon. Sacred artifacts had spirits, and they had always chosen their own masters. Without this opportunity, even if one guarded it for thousands of years, they still wouldn't be able to obtain its recognition. On the other hand, some people were destined to become its master. This was something that could not be stopped. Although he didn't like Rong Xiu, this kind of thing couldn't be changed by force. Yi Wentao was speechless. He frowned and looked at Jun Jiuqing with a complicated expression. He suddenly realized that he didn't seem to understand him at all. At this moment, Jun Jiuqing's expression was indifferent, and his eyes were deep. Even though Yi Wentao had been his master for many years, he didn't know what he was thinking at this moment. Yi Wentao was suddenly at a loss. Did Jun Jiuqing become like this after becoming the head of family Yi, or was he always like this? You deliberately gave the Myriad Peaks halberd to Wei Zhe. He said slowly and firmly. You and Wei Zhe worked together to spread the news about Tang Ku's tomb, right? Jun Jiuqing didn't say anything. Yi Wentao closed his eyes. What are you trying to do? You're already the head of family Yi. But he didn't realize it before, but now he realized that Jun Jiuqing's actions seemed to be premeditated. Master, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Jun Jiuqing said and stood up. Family Yi's vitality has been greatly damaged, and it's time for them to rest. There are many things that they need your help with. You must take care of yourself. Yi Wentao suddenly felt a chill slowly rising from the soles of his feet. Chu Luiyue and the others successfully left the stone forest and returned to Peach Blossom Cove. It had been nearly 2 months since the day they left. To Chu Luiyue's joy, Shang Guanyu and Chu Ning had both come. Shang Guanyu had already broken through to the high god level, and Chu Ning had also broken through to the 9th stage in a short period of time. He was only 1 step away from the high god level. One had to know that he had started cultivating from the 1st stage. This speed was already heaven-defying. Moreover, he had the indestructible divine body. Even if he hadn't broken through to the high god level yet, he still had extremely strong combat power. The news in the stone forest had spread. Everyone knew that Chu Luiyue had obtained Tang Ku's inheritance and was very likely to become the next weapon-refining saint in the future. The entire Peach Blossom Cove was jubilant. However, Shang Guanyu didn't stay for too long. After seeing Chu Luiyue, he only stayed for a few days before leaving. After all, he still needed someone to look after the Tianling dynasty. Although Chu Luiyue was reluctant, he still sent someone to send him back. Now that she was the master of Peach Blossom Cove, many things were much more convenient. She didn't have to worry about going in and out of the Divine Ruins world. She could return at any time, and Shang Guanyu could also come over at any time. Chu Ning stayed behind and focused on his cultivation. Now, Chu Luiyue was his only family and the person he cared about the most. There was no point in returning to Yao Chen. It was better to stay and use the cultivation environment of Peach Blossom Cove to improve his strength. Everything was gradually on the right track. On this day, Chu Luiyue came to Qingshui Cliff. She was accompanied by Sanson. Sanson followed behind. As he walked, he said, "Master, if you need any medicinal herbs, just let me know. There's no need for you to come here personally, right? Look at how busy you are every day." Chu Luiyue waved her hand. "I'm not sure what I need, so I came to take a look first." Sanson scratched his head. "Then what do you want to do, master? Why don't you tell me? Maybe I can help you?" Chu Luiyue laughed and looked back at him, her eyes full of suspicion. Sanson coughed and straightened his back. "Of course, don't think that I'm not very talented in celestial physician. Recently, I've read a lot of ancient books and studied a lot of secret recipes." It was rare for Sanson to be so diligent. Chu Luiyue knew without asking that he was definitely trying to open up new markets. She chuckled. "You really can't help me with this." Sanson was a little unconvinced. "You can't look down on me like this. If you tell me, maybe I can really help." Chu Luiyue stood still and raised her chin. "Open. Wonderful Book House." Chapter 2086. Even Sheng Guanjing, Nen Suhuai, and the others were surprised. They knew very well that Chu Luiyue didn't have a divine body before. Now this must have been cultivated during this period of time. What kind of divine body is that? Brother Shangguan, why do I feel that it's different from yours? Zhao Song asked curiously. Since Chu Luiyue was Sheng Guanjing's descendant and had his bloodline, they thought that she should have cultivated the same divine body. Sheng Guanjing shook his head. "I don't know when you cultivated the divine body. Besides, she's very talented. Maybe she chose the most suitable divine body for herself." Zhao Song nodded thoughtfully. This statement was not without reason. Every cultivator's physique and talent were different. Even people from the same family would sometimes choose different divine bodies to cultivate. Sheng Guanjing looked at Chu Luiyue's divine body carefully for a while, but he still couldn't recognize it. He turned to Nan Suhuai and asked in a low voice, "Dean Nan, do you recognize Er's divine body?" Even though he had seen a lot, he still couldn't recognize it. Although Nan Suhuai's seniority was lower than his, as the dean of Lingxiao College, he had countless precious ancient books and should know more than him. Besides, Er was a student of Lingxiao College. If she cultivated the divine body, she should have learned it from there. To his surprise, Nan Suhuai shook his head. "I don't know either." After pausing for a while, Nan Suhuai saw that Shangguan Jing and the others were a little surprised. Then he said, "Actually, Senior Shangguan, when was in the college, she read a lot of related books and tried to cultivate it many times. There were many top divine bodies, but she couldn't succeed. So, I'm relieved to see that she has successfully cultivated her own divine body. But I don't know the origin of this divine body. Since Nan Suhuai said so, it must be true." Suddenly, Rong Xiu's cold and deep voice sounded. Just went through the God-destroying tribulation some time ago." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a dead silence. God-destroying tribulation? Shangguan Jing suddenly thought of something and gasped. "You mean?" Rong Xiu's thin scarlet lips curved slightly and he nodded gently. Her god body was refined by the God-destroying tribulation. Chu Luiyue tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and his body instantly shot out like an arrow. He drew a straight red line in the air and went straight for Yi Wentao. The two of them faced each other, and the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. Compared to Yi Wentao's exceptionally tall and sturdy omnidirectional divine body, Chu Luiyue's figure seemed exceptionally small. It was as if Yi Wentao could easily kill her with a single strike. In fact, Yi Wentao thought the same. When he saw Chu Luiyue summon the godly body, he was a little surprised, but it was only for a moment. She was an exalted god, and it was normal for her to have a godly body. There was nothing to be surprised about. Although Yi Wentao could not tell what godly body she cultivated at first glance, there were hundreds and thousands of ways to cultivate godly bodies in this world. He could not possibly know all of them. Even if he could not tell, it did not matter. He did not need to pay attention to it at all, because his omnidirectional divine body was the top existence among all godly bodies. It was also because of this unique and powerful godly body that he had always been the head of the family all these years. Now, Chu Luiyue was planning to fight him head-on with her godly body. It seemed that her brain was really muddled. Yi Wentao sneered and threw a punch. The wind from the punch suddenly arrived. The strong wind came head-on and swept up Chu Luiyue's black hair. She stared straight ahead, and the power in her body was continuously gathering in her right hand at this moment. Then, she raised her arm directly and threw a punch, meeting Yi Wentao's punch. Gasps could be heard from the crowd. Chu Luiyue chose to fight Yi Wentao head-on? Wouldn't she, a mere high god, lose in such a hand-to-hand fight? This punch would probably cripple her even if she did not die. Yi Wentao sneered. It's been so long, but her arrogance hasn't changed at all. She was like this a few years ago, and she's still like this a few years later. In fact, she's becoming more and more arrogant. Jun Jiuqing stared at the field with a devilish look in his eyes, and his hands slowly clenched in his sleeves. He did not respond to Yi Wentao's words. However, the family Yi and Nan family members behind him had the same attitude as Yi Wentao. That's right. That Shangguan Yu really thinks that she's great just because she has some talent. She doesn't know that there's always someone better than her. How can the gap between a high god and a high god be so easily bridged? Even if her crimson gold celestial phoenix successfully opened its fifth meridian, I'm afraid it's too late. This time, it's finally over. Chu Luiyue turned a deaf ear to the noise. Her eyes burned with a strong desire to fight, and she pressed forward with indomitable will. Bam! Their fists collided. There was a dull thud. After a short pause, the ground around the two of them began to crack rapidly. The cracks spread like a spider web. It was obvious that the collision of the two of them in this fight was terrifying. However, what shocked everyone was that Chu Luiyue did not fly out as expected. She did not even move back half an inch. Everyone was stunned. Chu Luiyue, actually took the full blow of Yi Wentao's omnidirectional divine body? There was silence. Only the two of them were still fighting each other. Green and dazzling lights intertwined, and it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. Dark red blood slowly seeped out of the corner of Chu Liyue's mouth, and it made her look even paler. However, she was still standing on the same spot, facing off against Yi Wentao. At this moment, the surrounding Xian formations that had not been destroyed suddenly moved. Yi Wentao's divine body had destroyed the few Xian formations in the center and passed through them to fight with Chu Liyue. Therefore, Yi Wentao's divine body was standing on one side of the Xian formations, while his physical body was standing on the other side. Now, these Xian formations were operating very quickly, and they connected with each other again, filling up the broken parts and forming a complete giant net, which was heading towards Yi Wentao's physical body. Yi Wentao was originally standing at the back, waiting to see Chu Liyue get dealt with. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong, and when he looked, he realized that he was surrounded by those Xian formations again. Moreover, although there were fewer Xian formations than before, the power on them did not decrease at all. In fact, it seemed to have become stronger. Feeling the terrifying pressure, Yi Wentao's heart skipped a beat. How can this be? Chu Liyue's origin power should be almost depleted. Chu Liyue's gaze turned slightly, and her red lips suddenly curved into a cold arc. I forgot to say. Although I'm only a high god, the origin power in your body may not be comparable to mine. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2087. I've seen it with my own eyes. Chu Liyue didn't say that out loud. Su Li didn't look like she was faking it. She was such a powerful being that there were countless high gods and even venerables who were willing to follow her. Since she had said so, it was most likely true. But if that was the case, then what was going on with Debao? Chu Liyue remembered clearly that he had rebuilt his divine body in the Red Moon Desert. And at that time, in order to save her, he had transformed into a child in a moment of desperation. Speaking of external help, at the last moment, Debao had used her blood. But Chu Liyue didn't take it to heart. Judging from the reaction of Debao and the other two, they didn't want her help from the beginning. They were planning to rebuild their divine bodies by themselves. So much so that Chu Liyue had always thought that everyone was like that. But after hearing Su Li's words, she realized that her understanding was wrong. Su Li reached out and waved her hand in front of Chu Liyue. What are you thinking? Chu Liyue came back to her senses and smiled. Nothing. Actually, I've heard this from others. So it's wrong. Then, Mr. Su, is there really no one in this world who can do this? You mean to say that one can rebuild their divine body purely with their own strength? Su Li didn't see the abnormality in her expression and thought that she had misheard. She shook her head gently. I've never heard of such a thing. Chu Liyue lowered her eyes. But Su Li narrowed her eyes slightly as if she was thinking about something. Maybe someone stronger than venerables can do it. Who knows? Chu Liyue looked up at her in surprise. Someone stronger than venerables? Yes. But such a powerful person only exists in legends. Even Tang Ku and I have never seen such a person. By the way, I heard that you're a student of Lingxiao College? Yes. Some people say that the first dean of Lingxiao College was such a person. It's just that no one has personally verified it. Later on, he mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Those rumors about him were gradually drowned out by time, and no one mentioned it anymore. Su Li shook her head regretfully. Chu Liyue's heart was in turmoil. In that case, Debao, seeing Chu Liyue fall into silence, Su Li thought that she was still worried about the matter of reconstructing her physical body, so she comforted her. You don't have to worry too much. Even if you don't succeed in the end, it doesn't matter. Even if I don't have a physical body, I'm already very satisfied with this soul. Needless to say, she could still come out and see the wind and sunlight, and see all kinds of people in this world. To her, this was already extremely fortunate. Chu Liyue collected his thoughts, and the emotions in his eyes were completely restrained. She smiled. No matter what, let's try it first. You manner. In the study, Rong Xiu was writing something. Yuemo walked in hurriedly. Your Highness. There's news from the family Wei. Rong Xiu didn't stop what he was doing. Speak. Yuemo said. Some time ago, the family Wei's elder, Wei Qihan, did go out alone once. No one knows where he went or what he did. Rong Xiu's expression was calm, and his voice was light. What about the family? Yuemo lowered his head. The family Yi has been in chaos for a long time. It only calmed down after Yi Wentao died. However, because Yi Wentao self-destructed and suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Madame at Peach Blossom Cove, the family Yi felt embarrassed and didn't hold a grand funeral. They only buried him in a hurry. As for the Thousand Peaks halberd, it didn't cause much of a stir. That was natural. After all, the number of family Yi who knew about the existence of the Thousand Peaks halberd could be counted on one hand. Rong Xiu smiled. What's there to bury when the body and soul are destroyed? It's just a formality. Jun Jiuqing's ability to make an example out of someone was getting better and better. Yuemo sighed. No matter what, Yi Wentao was once a powerful figure in the family Yi. No one in the family Yi dared to say no to him in the past 100 years. Who knew that he would end up like this after his death? The past is the past after all. Rong Xiu put down his pen and picked up the paper in his hand to read it again. Jun Jiuqing had worked hard to get to where he was today. Naturally, he had to seize every opportunity to gain a foothold. Yi Wentao was just a stepping stone for him. The family Yi was originally very unwilling to stand on his side. Many of them were eyeing the position of the head of the family covetously. However, all of this quietly subsided with Yi Wentao's death. Everyone could see that Jun Jiuqing was definitely involved in Yi Wentao's death. However, this was the result that Jun Jiuqing wanted. Sometimes, forceful suppression was faster and more effective than any conciliatory method. He paused. Jun Jiuqing has always been a smart person. Yuemo asked hesitantly. Your Highness, are you going to let them collude like this? Jun Jiuqing is determined to take down the family Yi. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to give away Wan Feng halberd and use the family Yi to send I away. Since that's the case, I will give him face. Although he didn't care about Wan Feng halberd, it was a good opportunity to bring Tang Ku and Su Li out and establish Yu Er's prestige. Wei Zhe will contact the family Yi in the future. Just wait and see. Yuemo immediately replied, yes. At this moment, someone else walked in from outside the door. It was Yan Qing. Your Highness. As soon as Yan Qing walked in, he knelt down and bowed. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his expression was somewhat heavy. Yuemo rarely saw such an expression, and his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Could it be that something happened? Rong Xiu raised his chin. Just stand up and speak. Only then did Yan Qing stand up. He took out a letter from his bosom and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, the patriarch has passed away. 36 respected Elder Ming sent a letter back and asked you to set off immediately. When Yuemo heard the first half of the sentence, he didn't realize what was going on. However, when he heard the second half, he immediately widened his eyes in shock and almost jumped up. The patriarch has passed away? This was too sudden. Rong Xiu didn't look surprised. His slender fingers moved slightly, and the paper in his hand flew to Yan Qing. This is the eulogy I wrote for the patriarch. Copy it and distribute it to all the respected elders. Yuemo turned around with a shocked expression. When he came in, he saw that His Highness was writing something. However, he never expected that he was writing a eulogy for the patriarch. Your Highness? You already know? Yan Qing caught the paper and instantly understood something. He nodded respectfully. Rong Xiu tilted his head and looked out of the window. There were no clouds in the sky and the weather was good. Today's weather is good. It was a good day to send someone off. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2088. Chu Luiyue and Su Li discussed and chose some herbs, intending to try a few more times. Maybe they would succeed by a stroke of luck? After a long time, the two of them walked out of the room. Sanson, who was waiting outside, hurried forward with a face full of smiles. Master Mr. Su. Why did the two of you come out so quickly? Aren't you going to take a look? Chu Luiwei glanced at him. It was rare for this kid to be so generous. Don't you feel bad? What are you talking about? Sanson chuckled. Sanson's herbs are yours. You can just come and take whatever you want. Besides, if these herbs can really help Mr. Su, it's my honor, isn't it? This was the famous Mr. Su. It was rumored that he was one of the only 2 refining saints in the world of God. Even a venerable god would not dare to be presumptuous in front of such a person. They could not wait to suck up to him. What were these herbs? If they could build a relationship with this person, it would be a huge gain. Su Li covered her mouth and smiled. Your subordinate is really interesting. Sanson straightened his back after being praised, and his face was full of joy. Chu Luiwei looked at him sympathetically. Fortunately, Senior Tang Ku was not here now, otherwise, Mr. Su will be with me during this time, but not many people know about this. Master, don't worry. Sanson knows what to say and what not to say. Sanson immediately made a zipping motion on his mouth. Chu Luiwen nodded with satisfaction. It's good that you know. Actually, she was not worried about this. The people of the 13th U sect were all tight-lipped, especially Sanson. This was also one of the reasons why she brought Sanson with her. I'll have to trouble you, for the rest. After saying that, Su Li's figure flashed and disappeared again. Sanson smacked his lips and still felt that it was unbelievable. While waiting, he had already guessed that Mr. Su must have been brought back by his master when she went to Tang Ku's tomb. Judging from Mr. Su's attitude, he seemed to be quite close to his master. He knew that his master was powerful, but he didn't expect that even someone like Mr. Su could. Sanson gave him a thumbs up and was sincerely convinced. Master, you're really awesome. Sanson believed that she was already very good at making connections, but compared to her master, TSK, they couldn't compare. As long as she followed her master well, what else was impossible? Chu Luiwei was already immune to Sanson's flattery and praise. He raised his chin. Let's go. Chu Luiwei and Sanson quickly returned to the Yu residence. Naturally, they quickly learned of the news of Bailey Jun's death. He's gone? Chu Luiwei was originally flipping through a medical book. When he heard this, he immediately stopped what he was doing and looked up in surprise. Rong Xiu was sitting by the window drinking tea. White mist rose in spirals, covering his eyes and brows, making it difficult for people to see through him. Yes, yesterday. His subordinates said that he was unconscious when he left, so he did not suffer any torture. His tone was very indifferent, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. After a short moment of surprise, Chu Luiwei quickly reacted. Rong Xiu and Bailey Jun had always been on bad terms, so it was normal for him to have this attitude. Bailey Jun had been killed by the Black Demon Cave, and only the people of the Black Demon Cave knew how to cure him. However, the Black Demon Cave had been completely wiped out, and Mo Shiqian, the only one who had escaped, had his body destroyed, leaving only a soul. It was not surprising that Bailey Jun had fallen into such a state. However, it seemed that Rong Xiu had no intention of helping Bailey Jun from the beginning. After all, you're the leader of the Yuntian Tower. You still have to go back and deal with this matter personally, right? Chu Luiwei asked. Rong Xiu nodded. 36 respected Elder Ming has already sent a message. I waited for you to come back because I wanted to discuss with you when to set off. As the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, Chu Luiwei naturally had to go back. For this kind of matter, the sooner the better. Chu Luiwei rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She had planned to take advantage of this time to study how to help Su Li recover her body. Tang Ke used to be a god-level expert, so there was no need to worry too much. She did not expect that before she could take action, such a thing would happen. Even though everyone knew that Rong Xiu had already fallen out with Bailey Chun, they still had to save face for Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu looked at her and asked, Are you worried about Mr. Su's body? Chu Luiwei sighed. But Mr. Su was not a god-level expert in the past, so this matter is a little troublesome. I've been reading a lot of medical books recently, but I haven't been able to find a good way. Actually, it was not that there was no way. Other than rebuilding the body, they could also take over the body. But for someone like Su Li, Chu Luiwe knew that she would never do such a thing. She had to think of another way. Rong Xiu took a sip of tea and thought of something. By the way, the Yuntian Tower has a lot of treasured ancient books. Maybe we can find a way. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up. That's right. I almost forgot about that. The Yuntian Tower had been passed down for thousands of years. It was one of the top clans in the entire world of God. It had a deep foundation and countless treasures. Maybe they could really find something useful. Then let's hurry. Many things in Peach Blossom Dock were already on track, so she did not have to worry much. Also, after the Yuntian Tower's matter is over, I plan to go to the Red Moon Desert personally. Chu Luiwe said firmly. Calculating the time, the dangerous months should have passed. This time, she had to go no matter what. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly. All right. The next morning, the duo set off for the Yuntian Tower. After a long journey, they finally reached their destination. By the time they arrived at the ethereal hall, the exalted elders were already there. Seeing the two figures walking side by side and entering hand in hand, many people in the hall had complicated feelings. It had only been a few months since their wedding. However, too many things had happened during this period of time. Chu Luiwe had taken over the Peach Blossom Dock and become the head of the Yu clan. Chu Luiwe had made a name for herself after making a bet with Iwentao. It was said that she had even recruited many God Realm experts to her side, and the cultivators in Peach Blossom Dock were willing to follow her lead. All in all, even if Chu Luiwe didn't have the identity of the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, she could still stand on equal footing with any of the top clans in the world of God. Even if the Yu clan's foundation was still shallow, it couldn't stop them from having countless experts and rich resources. Looking at the smiling, slender and exquisite woman, who would have thought that she had actually relied on her own strength to reach her current position? Recalling the mockery and contempt they had for her in the past, many people felt embarrassed. 36 Exalted Elder Ming was delighted, and he was once again impressed by his holy son's eyesight. If it wasn't for the fact that they were discussing Bailey June's funeral, he would have welcomed her happily. 36 Exalted Elder Ming coughed and walked forward with a solemn expression. Holy Son. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2089. What's going on with the clan leader? Rong Xiu went straight to the point. 36 Respected Elder Ming cupped his hands. Your Highness, actually, the clan leader's condition has not been very good. Ever since he fell into a coma, the strength in his body has been depleted. We've tried all sorts of methods. He sighed. Moreover, the clan leader is depressed and shows no signs of waking up. We've tried our best, but we're still unable to reverse the situation. The hall suddenly became much quieter. Chu Luiwe raised his eyebrows slightly. These words were somewhat interesting. There was nothing much to say about being poisoned and causing him to fall into a coma. But to be depressed, he didn't need to think to know the reason. Back in Fangzhou City, the matter of Bailey June mistaking Jiang Jiwan for his bloodline had caused an uproar. No man could stand this kind of thing, let alone someone like Bailey June. He had been unparalleled in his life, noble and proud. He had always thought highly of himself. How could he accept such humiliation? Even if no one did anything to him, he probably didn't want to come out to see anyone again. It was fine if no one said anything before, but now that 36 Respected Elder Ming mentioned it, although it was very vague, everyone knew what was going on. Actually, they also felt embarrassed. Rong Xiu's brows twitched slightly, as if he was somewhat regretful. Some time ago, I and you accidentally found the current nest of the Black Demon Cave. We wanted to force Mo Shiqian to hand over the method to unlock the seal, but who knew that he was so cunning that he didn't hesitate to sacrifice the entire Black Demon Cave's subordinates to help himself escape. If I could have stopped him back then, perhaps the clan leader? Everyone in the hall was shocked. There's actually such a thing? That's too dangerous. Fortunately, His Highness and the Princess Consort are safe and sound. That's right. The people of the Black Demon Cave have always been cunning. It's already not easy for His Highness and the Princess Consort to return safely. Other things can't be forced. Because this matter happened outside of the Divine Ruins world, not many people in the Divine Ruins world knew about it. And because Emo Shiqian was still on the run, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu didn't spread the news. Therefore, not even the revered elders of the Yuntian Tower knew about it. When he heard this, he was naturally filled with shock. Chu Luiwei silently glanced at the man beside her. I don't remember Rong Xiu mentioning anything about Bailey June, 36 respected Elder Ming hurriedly asked. Were His Highness and Princess Consort injured? Rong Xiu's expression was calm as a faint smile appeared on his lips. They're all minor injuries. It's worth it to be able to wipe out the Black Demon Cave. The originally noisy hall once again fell into a strange silence. Even 36 respected Elder Ming had a stunned expression on his face. What? Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you. If she hadn't asked for help, we might not have been able to escape unscathed. As Rong Xiu spoke, he looked at Chu Luiwei proudly. Chu Luiwei sighed. Unfortunately, Emo Shiqian still escaped. Everyone was in a mess. Do you know what you're talking about? That's the Black Demon Cave. How can you say that you destroyed their nest so casually? Doesn't your conscience hurt? Everyone looked at the two of them as if they were looking at two monsters. These two people were too perverted. Some people secretly wiped their sweat, glad that they didn't take things too hard and offend these two people. Some were filled with uneasiness and uneasiness. They thought that it was already shocking to invite the patriarchs of two ancient divine beast clans to support the wedding. They never expected that there would be something even more outrageous. They really didn't know how His Highness chose this heaven-defying princess. Originally, he alone was already awe-inspiring enough. Now, there was also Chu Luiwei. They simply didn't want anyone to live. 36 respected Elder Ming's eyes wandered back and forth between the two of them. He stroked his beard and sighed. Sigh, actually, Your Highness has already done your best for the patriarch. It's a pity that the patriarch's luck was a little bad. He has already passed away. Your Highness, don't be too sad about this. I'll have to trouble Your Highness with the following matters. Rong Xiu nodded. Of course. The patriarch sacrificed a lot for the Yuntian Tower when he was alive. Now that he's dead, he naturally has to be buried grandly. Inform the people of the 28 divisions that everyone must be present to send off the patriarch on his last journey. 36 respected Elder Ming asked hesitantly. Of course, Your Highness, there's no problem with doing this, but is the Immortal Water Mausoleum going to be the same? At the mention of the Immortal Water Mausoleum, everyone's expressions became interesting. That was the Jiang family's territory. Although the patriarch of the Jiang family in the Immortal Water Mausoleum had changed, the previous incident still happened to the Jiang family. If they came, wouldn't the situation be very awkward? Bailey June was dead, but they were still alive. They still wanted to save face. Rong Xiu's expression didn't change. Of course. A dead person is like an extinguished lamp. Let bygones be bygones. It would have been better if he hadn't said anything. Now that he said it, the atmosphere became even more awkward. How could they let this matter pass? The storm had finally calmed down. If they made a big fuss now, what would the other aristocratic families think of them? After a moment, a respected elder spoke hesitantly. Your Highness, this matter should be considered at length, right? The patriarch was very controversial when he was alive. Why don't we let him pass away quietly? What do you think? With one person taking the lead, the rest immediately followed suit. That's right, Your Highness. Speaking of which, the patriarch died at the hands of the Black Demon Cave. If this matter was publicized, it would be bad for the reputation of the Yuntian Tower and the patriarch. Shouldn't we keep a low profile? That's right. If the patriarch's spirit is in heaven, he should also wish for this, right? We can all understand Your Highness's feelings, but this matter is not trivial. I hope Your Highness will reconsider. Everyone chimed in and quickly reached a consensus. They all persuaded Rong Xiu to give up on the idea of burying Bailey June. Rong Xiu frowned slightly, seemingly hesitant. 36 respected Elder Ming cupped his fists and bowed. I hope Your Highness will consider the Yuntian Tower. The bigger picture is more important. Rong Xiu was silent for a long time. Finally he said, "Alright. Wonderful book house." Chapter 2090. Yan Qing. Rong Xiu tilted his head slightly. Yan Qing, who was following behind him, immediately stepped forward and took out a stack of papers. "This is the eulogy I wrote for the patriarch. Everyone, please burn it in front of the patriarch's tomb to comfort his soul in heaven." After that, Yan Qing went over and distributed the papers. One for each person. There was no mistake. She had done all she could to go this far. There was nothing to nitpick about. Chu Luiwei was in awe as she watched from the side. TSK. In fact, from the beginning, Rong Xiu didn't intend to worry about this matter. What he said just now was just for show. But in this way, everything went smoothly. Even if this matter was spread out later, he would only agree to it because everyone begged him. He wouldn't be blamed at all. Bailey Jun had been the hegemon of the Yuntian Tower for many years, but in the end he ended up in such a miserable state. Of course, he had only himself to blame for all this. Bailey Jun was buried in a hurry. He didn't have any children, and his reputation was ruined because of the incident in Fangzhou City. No one in the entire Yuntian Tower went to pay respects to him. After his death, the name Bailey Jun seemed to be quickly forgotten by everyone. It was as if this person had never existed here. On the day of his burial, Rong Xiu officially became the patriarch of the Yuntian Tower in the main hall of the sacrificial god temple. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Chu Luiwei knew that Rong Xiu had his own plans, so he didn't interfere. After arriving at the Yuntian Tower, he went straight to the library. As Rong Xiu said, the books in the library of the Yuntian Tower were extremely precious. Some of them were books that Chu Luiwei hadn't even seen in Lingxiao College. The number of books in the library was indeed astonishing. Chu Luiwei read very quickly. At first, she only chose medical books, but later, she gradually picked some miscellaneous books. She learned a lot from them, but she still didn't find what she wanted the most. After reading for a few days without sleep, Chu Luiwei couldn't help but feel discouraged. Putting the books in his hand back, Chu Luiwei let out a long breath. Rong Xiu walked over. "There are so many books. You can't finish reading them in a short time." As he said, he carried her and walked to the small bed beside him. Chu Luiwei originally wanted to struggle, but she really couldn't take it anymore after a few days. Thus, she obediently leaned into his embrace. There were too many books here. Even if she read for half a year, she probably wouldn't be able to finish them all. What if she still couldn't find a solution after reading all of them? "Rong Xiu, don't you think I'm wasting too much time searching like this?" Rong Xiu gently placed her on the small couch and sat at the side. He then placed her head on his lap, and his slender fingers touched her temple as he started to massage it with moderate strength. Chu Luiwei snuggled into his arms comfortably. Rong Xiu paused and looked at her with a deep gaze. "Don't move." Chu Luiwei immediately became obedient. "Oh." Rong Xiu adjusted her posture before continuing. He asked casually, "This is not easy." "It's not that easy to begin with. After all, no one has ever done this before." Chu Luiwei was silent for a moment, then suddenly opened her eyes. "No, maybe someone has done this before." She straightened up and threw herself into Rong Xiu's arms. She placed her hands on his chest and said word by word, "I'm going to Peach Blossom Cove now. Wonderful book house." Chapter 2091. Rong Xiu was originally sitting down, but when she moved, he immediately reached out one hand to support himself on the couch and used the other hand to support her waist. Their bodies were close together. She was on top and he was on the bottom. They could smell each other's breaths. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Are you sure you want to talk to me like this?" Chu Luiwei realized that their posture was not right. She blushed and immediately wanted to crawl away. Rong Xiu held her waist, raised his head slightly, and kissed her lips. His deep voice was blurred between their lips. "I'll go with you." Chu Luiwei thought in a daze that this was not bad. Tang Ke had been following Rong Xiu. If the two of them went together, they might be able to help Tang Ku and Su Li recover together. Of course, She also wanted to see how Debeo and the rest were doing. Sensing that she was distracted, Rong Xiu bit her gently. Hiss, Chu Lue subconsciously moved back and murmured, feeling wronged. It hurts, Rong Xiu chuckled and comforted her patiently. I'll be gentler. Red Moon Desert. Unknowingly, the overwhelming crimson color had quietly dissipated. The blazing sun scorched the vast desert. The terrifyingly high temperature seemed to burn even the air. There was no wind, but heat waves rolled. Only the blue waves in the middle of the desert occasionally rippled. Under the lake, there was a cage that was dark and sunless. The strong smell of blood filled the air. There were dark red bloodstains everywhere, as if an unusually fierce battle had just taken place. 3 figures sat facing each other in a triangle. They were Dugumabao and his companions. At this moment, an extremely complicated silver Xian formation was floating above their heads, rotating slowly. A faint glow enveloped the 3 of them. It was extremely powerful. If Chu Lue was here, he would definitely discover that this profound formation was extremely similar to the one summoned by Lingxiao College on Thousand Wine Mountain, but it was even more complicated and obscure. Under the profound formation, there was a palm-sized black shadow at the center of the 3 people. There seemed to be some kind of strange pattern on the shadow, but it was incomplete and could not be distinguished. Time passed slowly, and the shadow gradually faded away. When the last dot completely disappeared, the profound formation above the 3 people's heads also stopped rotating at the same time, and then dissipated with a loud bang. Dugumabao's body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Diu Zhang's and Lan Zhao's conditions weren't any better. Their auras had become much weaker. Motherf *Ker, he's so hard to deal with. Diu Zhangzi forced himself to hold on, and couldn't help but curse. Fortunately, and Rong Xiu released this old man's aura, otherwise he might not have been able to make it through this time. He looked at Dugumabao and Lan Xiao. How are you guys? Dugumabao raised his hand, wiped the blood from the corner of his lips, and slowly opened his eyes. I'm fine. Lan Xiao was still chained up, and he could only barely move when he heard that. He raised a hand, covered half of his face, and laughed. What a pity. I was quite satisfied with this face this time, but it was ruined just like that. Diwu Zhangzi frowned. You're still thinking about this at a time like this? Although that was what he said, he still heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Lan Xiao still had the mood to talk about this. Lan Zhao's mouth twitched, and the face under his hand was already badly damaged. Don't worry, I won't die. It's not that easy to take my life. It's naturally not easy to kill you when you're at your peak, but it's not difficult to take your life now. Dugumaba looked over coldly, and his voice didn't fluctuate as he spoke. Lan Xiao pursed his lips and tried hard to roll his eyes. I knew you wouldn't say anything good. Dugumabao ignored him and continued, your soul can't last for too long. If you can't reconstruct your divine body as soon as possible, it's only a matter of time before your soul disperses. After saying that, the surroundings went silent for a moment. They all knew that Dugumabao was speaking the truth. After a while, Lan Xiao leaned lazily against the stone wall behind him and muttered with a headache, reconstruct your divine body? It's easy to say, but do you think everyone is as sick as you? Moreover, he had already failed once before, which made things worse. He could barely survive the dangerous months this time because of Dugumabao and Diwu Zhang's help. How could it be so easy to reconstruct his divine body? Then, the corners of his mouth twitched as he chuckled nonchalantly. It's fine even if I can't survive. I've been trapped in this lousy place for so long. Even if you guys aren't annoyed, I'm annoyed, Dugumabao said coldly. If you want to die, why didn't you seize any of the many chances in the past 10,000 years? Lan Xiao couldn't keep his face straight. I'm just saying. What do you take it for real? Diwu Zhangzi held his forehead helplessly. The dangerous months had just ended, and they were arguing again. He really didn't know how he had been stuck between the two of them all these years. Besides, even if I'm really going to die, I have to see you one more time before I die, right? Suddenly, Dugumabao's expression changed slightly and he stood up. She's here. He turned around and glanced at Lan Xiao indifferently. You can die without regrets. Lan Xiao. Will it kill you to say something nice? Can't you see that I'm already in this state? Even if she's here, wait, who did you say came? Lan Xiao was about to scold him when he suddenly froze. Diwu Zhangze had already reacted. He was delighted at first, then asked nervously, is here? How did she get here so quickly? Dugu Mabao frowned slightly. The dangerous months this time are longer than before, so she's not that fast anymore. After all, it's been a long time since Rong Xiu sent Diwu Zhangze's aura back. But fortunately it's all in the past. That won't do. Our current situation, Diwu Zhangze was fine, but Dugu Mabao was injured, and Lan Xiao was the most seriously injured. But if that last saw it, she would definitely guess something. Lan Xiao hurriedly said, "That's right. My face hasn't recovered yet, so I can't see her." I can't see her. Dugu Mabao glanced at the two of them. She can't enter this place for the time being, so what are you worried about? After his reminder, Diwu Zhangze and Lan Xiao came back to their senses and heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, Rong Xiu is here too. Dugu Mabao's eyes were filled with impatience. Diwu Zhangze hesitated. It's probably because I told them about the dangerous months last time, so they came together because they were worried. Dugu Mabao said, "Stay here. You guys stay here. I'll go out and meet them." At the same time, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu finally arrived at the lake. Chu Luiwei surveyed her surroundings and slightly knitted her brows. Rong Xiu asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know. I keep feeling that something is wrong here. It's different from before." Chu Luiwei's nose twitched slightly, and a hint of suspicion flashed across her eyes. "Rong Xiu, do you smell blood?" Rong Xiu's eyes flickered slightly and he shook his head. He looked around as well. "This place seems to be the same as before. What do you think is wrong?" Chu Luiwei didn't say anything. Yes, she knew that this desert didn't look any different from before. As far as the eye could see, it was still an endless stretch of yellow sand. And the lake in front of her was still the same as before. It was difficult for such a simple and vast scenery to change. But she just felt that something was different. This feeling was very subtle, and she didn't know how to describe it. "Maybe it's my illusion." Chu Luiwei hesitated for a while before saying with some uncertainty. Rong Xiu squeezed her hand, and his slightly calloused palm completely covered her hand. "Maybe it's because of Wei Yu?" Chu Luiwei was deep in thought. "Maybe," she shook her head and suppressed these messy thoughts. "I wonder how Debao and the others are doing now." Before she finished speaking, layers of ripples suddenly appeared on the surface of the water. The lake water slowly separated from the middle, and a small figure walked out. It was a boy who looked to be 3 or 4 years old. He had purple hair and purple eyes, and was very cute. Only the astonishing pressure faintly emitted from his body made people dare not underestimate him. Chu Luiwei was delighted. "Debao!" When Dugu Mabao saw her, a faint smile finally appeared on his iceberg-like face. But this smile quickly disappeared when he saw Rong Xiu standing next to him. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. "Senior Dugu." Chu Luiwei had long been used to Dugu Mabao's cold appearance, so she didn't care. She quickly went forward and asked, "Debao, how are you doing? Also, how are Senior Diwu and Senior Lan Xiao?" Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2092. Dugu Mabao leaped into the air and arrived in front of the two of them in an instant. He landed on the sand dune and raised his wrist gently. The separated lake quickly closed and returned to its original calm state. "Don't worry, we're all fine." Chu Luiwei breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that. "That's good." She had been very worried when she heard Diwu Zhangze talk about the dangerous moon. It seemed to be very serious and dangerous. Diwu Zhangze and the other two weren't ordinary people. Until now, Chu Luiwei still didn't know how strong they were. The only thing she was sure of was that they were definitely more powerful than she expected. Even they found this dangerous moon tricky. It was not hard to imagine how dangerous the situation was. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei's eyes focused and stared at Dugu Mabao. Dugu Mabao noticed something and asked, What's wrong? Chu Luiwei did not speak. She walked straight to Dugu Mabao and pointed at his collar. What's this? Dugu Mabao was taken aback as he lowered his head to take a look. Only then did he see that his collar was stained with blood. The blood was only the size of a fingernail and had already soaked into his clothes. It was very inconspicuous. But Chu Luiwei's eyes were sharp and saw it at a glance. Dugu Mabao frowned slightly. It should have been accidentally stained when he vomited blood at the end. Because she came at such a coincidence, he did not have time to check it carefully before coming out. It's a little blood. Dugu Mabao looked up. The expression in his eyes had returned to calmness. It's inevitable to get injured in the dangerous moon, but it's not a big deal. After he finished speaking, with a thought, a ray of light flashed, and the blood stain disappeared completely. Under the illumination of the sun, his clothes were like armor, glowing with a delicate and light light. His tone was casual, as if he did not take this matter to heart at all. Chu Luiwei scrutinized him, as if trying to determine if he was telling the truth. Dugu Mabao looked at her quietly. Chu Luiwei felt a little helpless. Debao looked like a child, but in reality he was an old fox who had lived for countless years. His intelligence and means were not lacking. If he really wanted to hide something, it should be very difficult for her to detect it. The two of them looked at each other for a moment, but Chu Luiwei couldn't see anything. In the end, he could only give up. It's good that you're all right. She looked at the calm lake again. Where are Senior Diwu and Senior Lan Xiao? Why didn't he come out? If it was in the past, they would have greeted her the moment she entered the Red Moon Desert. This time, however, it was strangely quiet. After Diwu merged with that aura, he has been recuperating. Lan Xiao is thinking about reconstructing his divine body. Dugu Mabao's answer was flawless. Chu Luiwei calmed down a little. Hearing Shi Yan mention the god body, he remembered the purpose of this trip. By the way, Debao, speaking of this, I have something to ask you. Speak. Chu Luiwei paused and asked word by word. Previously, when you reconstructed your divine body, how did you do it? Dugu Mabao looked at her strangely. Weren't you there at that time too? She should be the one who knew best how he did it. Chu Luiwei shook her head. No, what I mean is that ordinary cultivators can't do it with their own strength, but you, Dugu Mabao's eyes showed a hint of dissatisfaction. I'm not an ordinary cultivator. Of course, I can do it. Who was she questioning? Chu Luiwei. It had been so long, so his arrogant and conceited personality hadn't changed at all. She suddenly let out a long sigh of relief and couldn't help but rub Debao's hair. Debao's expression changed. Just as he was about to flare up, he heard Chu Luiwei sigh. Hearing you say that, I'm relieved. Debao was still the same Debao. If he could say something like that, it meant that the situation should be fine. Hearing this, Debao paused. He looked up and saw her smiling brightly as if she had heaved a sigh of relief. The anger in his heart suddenly disappeared without a trace. Chu Luiwei was a little curious and asked excitedly. So, your strength is really above the venerable gods? Debao tilted his head and looked at her impatiently. His face said, Do you still need to ask such nonsense? Chu Luiwei retracted her hand in embarrassment. Big brother, I can't afford to offend him. You came this time to ask about this? Debao's voice was already full of undisguised disdain. Chu Luiwei shook her head. No, I came this time to do two things. The first thing I want to ask is, do you know how to help a 9th-stage warrior reconstruct his physical body? I've read many books, but I couldn't find the answer. Dugu Mabao narrowed his eyes. Who do you want to help? Chu Luiwei immediately told him about Su Li. There's really no other way, so I thought that maybe you would know. It's a small matter. He interrupted Chu Luiwei. What's the second thing? Chu Luiwei took a deep breath. He actually knew. However, before she could be shocked, she immediately said when she heard Dugu Mabao's question. The second thing is, I thought that I helped you reconstruct your divine body before, so I came this time to help Senior Diwu and Senior Lan Xiao. Before she could finish speaking, Dugu Mabao's face darkened. No. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Why not? There's no why. Dugu Mabao's attitude was very firm. I said no, and it means no. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2093. His voice traveled to the bottom of the lake. Lan Xiao finally couldn't help but scold. What's wrong with him? You already said that she wants to help. Why did he reject her? Does that mean that you can help him? I haven't said anything yet. Diwu Zhangzi glanced at him. Then you can go and say it now. They were trapped here and couldn't go out except for the night of the red moon. However, the entire Red Moon Desert was under their control. As long as they spoke, that girl outside would definitely hear them. You want her to help? Of course not. Then why are you talking about it? Lan Xiao looked up. Her wants to help me. What's the point of rejecting her? Even if I want to reject her, I have to say it personally. It wasn't easy for you to show concern for him, but before he could get anything he was mercilessly stopped by Debao. Who could stand this? Diwu Zhangzi reminded him. That girl can't come in now, and you can't go out either. You can't handle this. Lan Xiao rolled his eyes. You only know how to pour cold water on me. Who said that she can't come in? Isn't Rong Xiu here too? As long as he's willing to help, Diwu Zhangzi coughed. Lower your voice, Debao can hear you. Lan Xiao choked, and his initial arrogance was immediately extinguished. Also, don't forget what your face looks like now. Do you really want to see her like this? This sentence hit the nail on the head. Lan Xiao was enlightened, then he hugged his head in pain. How could I forget about this? He lay down on the side weakly and felt sorry for himself. My peerless beauty is ruined just like that. Diwu Zhangzi closed his eyes and couldn't be bothered with him. That face of his was changed every day, and he didn't seem to be in pain. Besides, when was he not like this? What was there to cry about? Chu Luiyue didn't expect Debao to reject so firmly and was stunned for a moment. Looking at Debao's solemn little face, she was full of doubts. It shouldn't be, didn't I help Debao before? Helping Lan Xiao this time shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, Debao and the other two were very close. Logically speaking, Debao had no reason to reject her. Are you sure? Debao's expression did not change. He raised his eyes and looked at her steadily. That won't do. Last time was just an accident. The same thing will not happen again. Chu Luiyue was about to persuade him again when Debao continued, Lan Xiao isn't useless. He will settle this matter himself. If he really can't, there's still me and Diwu. You don't have to worry anymore. That one sentence had pretty much sealed off all possibilities. Chu Luiyue frowned. She really didn't know what Debao was thinking. But from the looks of it, he wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. She thought for a moment and nodded. All right. Since you've said so, then I won't interfere. However, you promised to help Mr. Su before, so I'll start right here. If there's anything wrong, it's convenient for me to ask you at any time, right? Debao frowned slightly. It was really inconvenient to keep her here at this time, but if he rejected her now, it would arouse her suspicion again. She had always been smart. After thinking for a moment, he finally nodded. Under the scorching sun, the heat wave in the desert was overwhelming. Chu Luiyue stood on a sand dune and summoned the heavenly square cauldron. Mr. Su, you can come out first. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Li's figure flew out. She came to Chu Luiyue's side and looked around, only to find that there was no one else here except for Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. She was stunned for a moment and asked cautiously, Where's the senior you mentioned? Before coming to the Red Moon Desert this time, Chu Luiyue told her that she planned to come to the Red Moon Desert to look for a senior. That senior might have a way to solve her problem. But as far as the eye could see, there was only yellow sand everywhere. There was no one at all. Chu Luiyue smiled. That senior doesn't like to see strangers, so he has already gone back. But don't worry, Mr. Su. He does know how to help you reconstruct your physical body. I invited you out because I'm going to use the heavenly square cauldron to refine medicine for you. Su Li's eyes widened in surprise. Really? Chu Luiyue nodded with a smile. Of course. She knew that Dugu Mabao and the others didn't like too many people knowing that they were here, so before coming, she had already thought about it and decided not to reveal these things first. Along the way, although Su Li stayed in the heavenly square cauldron, Now that the heavenly square cauldron had recognized Chu Luiwei as its master, she only needed to think about it to hide these things from Su Li. After asking Dabao, she officially invited Su Li out. Of course, before that she and Rong Xiu had already changed places. The Red Moon Desert was vast and boundless, and the place where the lake was located was the most central and also the most confidential location. And this place was quite a distance from there, so there was no need to worry about being discovered. Su Li didn't suspect anything and immediately nodded in understanding. Since that senior even knew this, he must be a very powerful person. It was normal for such a powerful existence to not like the secular world. Please thank that senior for me. Su Li said seriously. Also, I've really troubled you with this matter. Chu Luiwei smiled. Mr. Su, don't be in a hurry to say these things. I know the method, but whether it will work or not is still unknown. It won't be too late to thank you after you really reconstruct your physical body. Su Li shook her head and smiled with her dimples. Whether it succeeds or not, Su Li will remember this kindness in her heart. Chu Luiwei blinked. Although Su Li had extremely high attainments in refining weapons and was considered famous in the entire Divine Ruins world, she didn't have much experience in the world and her personality was still pure and kind. It was no wonder that Tang Ke had deep feelings for her. She curled her lips into a smile and whispered, "You can just wait by the side first." Su Li nodded and walked to the side. She nodded and greeted Rong Xiu, and then began to wait quietly. Chu Luiwei took out the medicinal herbs according to the prescription given by Dabao and arranged them in order beside her. After a while, all kinds of boxes were densely packed around her. There were at least a few hundred kinds. But the key was that she didn't seem to be stopping until now. Su Li watched from the side and couldn't help but feel nervous. So many medicinal herbs? Chu Luiwei said while taking the medicinal herbs. Yes, the level of the pill to be refined this time is not low, so a lot of medicinal herbs are needed. Su Li frowned slightly. It wasn't that she had never seen a celestial physician refining medicine, but such a lineup still surprised her. What level is it? Why is it so troublesome? Chu Luiwei paused and looked over. Great physician. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2094. What? Su Li was shocked. She couldn't help but widen her eyes. She almost suspected that she had heard wrongly. A grand physician level pill? A grand physician was a level above that of a physician. It was the highest level of celestial physician. Even in Lingxiao College, there were very few celestial physicians who could reach this level. And they were basically elders who were very old. For example, Elder Wan Zheng. He could be considered one of the top celestial physician elders in Lingxiao College. However, he was already more than 100 years old when he broke through to become a grand physician. Chu Luiwei was not even 20 years old now, but she was challenging to refine a grand physician level pill. It was no wonder that Su Li had such a big reaction. In front of Chu Luiwei, Su Li couldn't say that she doubted her ability. However, even if she didn't say it, Chu Luiwei knew what she was thinking. Mr. Su, whether I succeed or not, I have to give it a try. If I succeed, everything will be fine. What do you think? In fact, not long after she recovered her memory, she had already broken through to become a physician. As for a grand physician, although she hadn't broken through yet, she had vaguely touched the threshold of that level. It just so happened that this was a rare opportunity. Even if it was difficult, she had to give it a try. Su Li looked at her determined expression and inexplicably calmed down a lot. Someone who could make the celestial shield recognize him as its master must be extraordinary. She clenched her fists and cautioned carefully, "Okay, but you must be careful. Just try your best. Don't force it." She didn't want to implicate Chu Luiwei because of her. Chu Luiwei smiled. "Don't worry, I know what to do." After saying that, she began to take out the herbs again. Fortunately, she was well prepared. She had all the herbs she needed. Otherwise, this trip would be troublesome. After a while, she finally prepared all the herbs. Just in case, she prepared 5 sets. If she failed, she could still try a few more times. After confirming that everything was fine, Chu Luiwei came in front of the heavenly square cauldron and hit it with her palm. Boom! A ball of transparent flame began to burn. Chu Luiwei began to methodically put the medicinal herbs around him in one after another. Her movements were very fast, but also very smooth. When these herbs fell into the heavenly square cauldron, they were quickly divided into several parts of the flames that devoured and refined them. Soon, a faint bitter medicinal fragrance filled the air. Su Li murmured in surprise. Is this really the level of a doctor? She had seen many doctors before, but none of them could be compared to Chu Luiwei. Whether it was the control of the flame, the selection of the herbs, or the control of the entire process, Chu Luiwei could be said to be the best. Su Li couldn't help but look at Rong Xiu, who was next to her, but she saw that his expression was the same as usual. He was calm and composed, without the slightest hint of surprise. It was as if he had expected Chu Luiwei to do this. Su Li couldn't help but sigh in her heart. From the moment she left the wind separation cave, she knew that these two people were not simple. But she also didn't expect them to be so powerful. During this period, she had stayed with Chu Luiwei in Peach Blossom Cove for some time and heard a lot about Chu Luiwei. Naturally, this included the battle between Chu Luiwei and Yi Wentao. He fought against Her Eminence in the High God realm and won in the end. Since then, he had dominated Peach Blossom Cove. Su Li had always thought that Chu Luiwei's talent as a martial artist and a Xian master was the best, but now she realized that she was very wrong. This person had the most outstanding talent in every aspect of cultivation. Time passed slowly. Su Li watched from the side as Chu Luiwei refined the herbs bit by bit. Her initial shock gradually turned into acceptance. Most of the cultivators in this world were partial talents. They were extremely talented in only one aspect of cultivation and were lacking in other aspects. She herself was the best example. Even after she became a weapon refining saint, her cultivation as a martial artist was still at rank 9 and she couldn't even break through to become a high god. Even if there were some people who had 2 or more talents at the same time, it was actually very difficult for them to do well in all aspects. This was because it required a lot of time and energy. It was already very difficult for an ordinary person to focus on one thing and stand out in one aspect, let alone others. But Chu Luiwei, this was truly heaven-defying. Su Li sighed silently in her heart. Martial artist, Xian master, weapon refiner, celestial physician. She did all of them extremely well. Not to mention people of the same age, even many elders who had cultivated for many years might not be able to do better than her. This really depended on talent. Of course, it also depended on hard work. Both were indispensable. Other than that, Chu Luiwei also contracted 2 divine beasts, which were closely related to the 2 ancient divine beast clans. Such a person was simply too terrifying. Chu Luiwei focused on the heavenly square medicine cauldron in front of her. At this moment, she had already refined over 100 herbs. And this wasn't even half of it. While controlling the heat, she kept recalling the prescription that De Bao gave her in her mind. She was extremely cautious and didn't dare to relax at all. However, what made her feel a little relieved was that she realized that her alchemy skills had indeed increased compared to before. Although she hadn't been able to take out much time to refine pills during this period of time, it seemed to be easier than expected due to the increase in her abilities in all aspects. She continued to put the remaining herbs in one by one. On the other side, Dugu Mabao had already returned to the bottom of the lake. As soon as he returned, Lan Xiao harumphed harshly and turned around. Dugu Mabao obviously didn't care as he walked straight to his seat and sat down. Diwu Zhangzi pointed up and asked tentatively, De Bao, did you just give the girl the prescription for the soul concentrating pill? That's a master physician level pill. Dugu Mabao closed his eyes as if he didn't want to bother. However, Diwu Zhangzi couldn't hold it in and continued asking. The girl wants to help that Mr. Su reconstruct the body of a stage 9 warrior. Actually, a Qingyang pill of the doctor level is enough. Why did you? Before he could finish, he suddenly realized something and widened his eyes abruptly as he pointed at Dugu Mabao with a trembling finger. Dugu Mabao opened his eyes and said calmly, I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose. But wonderful book house. Chapter 2095. You did it on purpose. Why are you still asking me what's wrong? Looking at Dugu Mabao's self-righteous face, Diu Zhangze almost scolded him. You really, meeting that pair of cold purple eyes, Diu Zhangze's strong desire to live forced him to swallow the words that he was about to blurt out. He gave him a thumbs up and praised him insincerely. You're so smart. The coldness on Dugu Mabao's face faded a little. It's been so long, yet you're still a doctor. It'll be even worse if you don't spur her on. Since she came here on her own this time, it's a rare opportunity. Diu Zhangze was speechless. Although it wasn't the first time Dugu Mabao did something like this. But every time, he could set a new low and set a new record. He was quite impressive. But every time, he had a good reason and made others speechless. Of course, this others was mainly referring to him and Lan Xiao. The reason why they succumbed time and time again was purely due to Dugu Mabao's authority. After hesitating for a while, he couldn't help but ask. Debao, I know you're doing this for Er's sake, but she's still a doctor now. She hasn't even looked at the prescription of a doctor. You suddenly came and wanted her to try refining this level of pill. Isn't that making things difficult for her? Exactly. Lan Xiao stood up abruptly, crossed his arms and sneered. It's so difficult to refine that soul-consolidating pill. If there's a mistake, all the previous efforts will be wasted and it'll be a complete failure. It's fine if this pill refinement fails, but what if the girl gets hurt? He was already furious because Dugu Mabao had rejected Er's help for him. Now that he heard this, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Dugu Mabao glanced at the two of them coldly. Who said she hasn't seen it? The two were about to argue, but their expressions changed when they heard him. What do you mean? Dugu Mabao brushed the non-existent dust off his clothes and said calmly, She's seen it a few years ago. Diu Zhangze frowned. That's not right. You didn't show her a doctor's prescription? His voice suddenly stopped as he stared at Dugu Mabao in disbelief. Lan Xiao suddenly realized something too. You bastard! You mixed in the prescription of the great doctor? No. Dugu Mabao was calm and composed. I added some doctor's points into the prescription of a grand doctor. Chu Luiwen naturally didn't know what was happening under the lake. She just felt a little strange. Although she had never seen the formula for the soul-concentrating pill, she found that it was much easier to refine than she had imagined. There were indeed many types and quantities of these medicinal herbs, but it was not troublesome to arrange them according to the order. However, this thought only flashed through her mind for a moment before she quickly suppressed it. If he could successfully refine it, it would naturally be for the best. Rong Xiu stood with his hands behind his back, quietly watching from the side. Suddenly, a gentle breeze blew over. An extremely faint fragrance filled the air. His brows moved slightly as he turned to look. That was the direction of Mirror Lake. And he couldn't be more familiar with this fragrance. It was the scent of the dancing lotus. He stared at it for a while, and there seemed to be waves gradually surging in his deep eyes. Then he moved his fingers slightly, and a golden light flashed past. That faint fragrance quickly dissipated. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2096. This minute ripple did not attract Chu Liyue's attention. She concentrated on refining the various medicinal herbs in the heavenly square medicinal cauldron. Just this point alone consumed her an entire day's time. When night fell, she finally put the last medicinal herb in. The Red Moon Desert at night was exceptionally cold. On the sand dunes, a thin layer of frost seemed to have condensed. The cold air was bone-piercing. But fortunately, this was not considered a problem to Chu Liyue. In front of her, the transparent flame in the heavenly square medicinal cauldron burned continuously. The fire clearly lit up the surroundings. Under the dark sky, this wisp of fire was especially conspicuous. An increasingly rich medicinal fragrance spread out from within. Chu Liyue held her breath. The medicinal herbs were already refined. The next thing to do was to condense the pill. This step was even more complicated and hard to determine. The slightest bit of carelessness would result in a complete loss. Hence, Chu Luiwei was even more cautious at this time. She started to fuse these medicinal herbs bit by bit. Su Li gasped in amazement as she watched by the side. So many medicinal herbs. Even if you let me remember, I also can't remember. You, not only can put them in order, she can even control the fire and fuse their medicinal properties together. Truly incredible. She knew nothing about celestial physician, but she could also see how hard it was to refine this grand physician-level medicinal pill. And Chu Luiwei was still so young. If she succeeds this time, she should be able to become the youngest grand physician in the Divine Ruins world, right? Su Li heaved a long sigh. Even if she did not succeed, looking at Chu Luiwei's series of skilled reactions, she should also not be far from breaking through. Condense. Chu Luiwei gave a clear cry. The flame in the heavenly square medicinal cauldron suddenly pounced. All the medicinal herbs thoroughly gathered. A fist-sized medicinal pill gradually took shape. But right at this time, an explosive energy suddenly rushed out from that medicinal pill. Chu Luiwei secretly cursed. She immediately controlled the flame to surge up, attempting to suppress it. However, the power condensed within the pill was too strong. It was simply not something that Chu Luiwei could control when it suddenly exploded. Several streams of turbulence directly broke through the encirclement of the flames and rushed towards Chu Luiwei. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes, but in the end he restrained his impulse to make a move. Chu Luiwei tapped the ground with his toes and quickly set up a barrier in front of him. Boom! Boom! The shockingly violent force fiercely slammed into the barrier in front of Chu Luiwei, causing a series of explosions. Chu Luiwei only felt a terrifying pressure crushing down on her, causing her feet to sink deep into the sand. Fortunately, this force came and went quickly. In addition, Chu Luiwei's summoning barrier was timely enough, so he was not injured. It was a pity that the pill was destroyed. Chu Luiwei pulled his feet out of the sand and looked at the medicinal cauldron in front of him. There was only a pile of ashes left in the transparent medicinal cauldron. A faint burnt smell wafted over. Chu Luiwei coughed and rubbed her nose. This great doctor-level pill was really not easy to refine. Su Li was worried when she saw this and immediately wanted to go forward. Chu Luiwei waved her hand. It's normal to fail in refining pills. What's more, this is my first time trying to challenge this level. It's inevitable that there will be mistakes. But after a few more tries, it should be enough. You don't have to worry. Seeing that Chu Luiwei seemed to be in a good state, Su Li could only wait quietly in the same place. Chu Luiwei tidied up the medicinal cauldron, then closed her eyes and began to recall what went wrong during the refining process. After pondering for a long time, she finally opened her eyes and began the second attempt. With the experience of the first time, the second time was indeed more convenient. However, Chu Luiwei did not dare to slack off. At this time, it was already noon of the second day. The frost on the ground had already melted without a trace, and the ground became boiling hot again. Fortunately, Chu Luiwei had stayed here for quite some time before, so she was already used to it. The rich medicinal fragrance once again permeated the air. Sigh, I don't know if you will succeed this time. Under the lake, Diu Zhangzi muttered worriedly. Lan Xiao glanced at him. Be content. To be able to do this on her first try, she's already 1 in a million. Diu Zhangzi snorted. If it were someone else, I naturally wouldn't have such hopes. But you, isn't someone else. Besides, didn't Debao say that he had already shown her many great doctor-level prescriptions? With her comprehension, what can't she do? Debao, don't you think so? It would have been fine if he didn't mention this, but now that he did, Lan Xiao was speechless. He quickly glanced at Dugumabao. Only he would do such a wicked thing, and he still has the cheek to say it? Isn't he afraid that she won't know what's important and will practice it wrongly? Dugumabao's expression didn't change. She accepted all those Xian formations back then, let alone these prescriptions. Lan Xiao, don't think that everyone in the world is like you just because you're stupid. Lan Xiao was furious and was about to get up, but he forgot that he was still chained up and was pulled back again. He was just a soul now, and logically speaking, he shouldn't feel any pain. However, these chains were very strange. Once he moved too much, they would punish him. A dark light flashed across the chains, and Lan Zhao's aura instantly withered. Diwu Zhangzi frowned. You're in the worst situation now. Stay here obediently and don't torment yourself. Lan Zhao clenched his teeth and laughed. If it was back then, how could such a small thing trap me? Dugu Mabao said calmly. Since you know it's not like back then, don't force yourself. Based on your current situation, it'll be extremely difficult for you to condense a divine body. At the mention of this, Lan Zhao finally fell silent. He half leaned against the wall behind him, lowered his head, and didn't speak for a long time. Diwu Zhangzi nodded. Big Bao is right. It wasn't easy to get through the dangerous months, and you can rest well. Speaking of this, he looked at Dugu Mabao with a headache. But this is easy to say, but it's very troublesome to do. Especially now that is still here. When she was here in the past, the situation wasn't so bad. Every time there was a dangerous month, they could use all kinds of reasons to send her away. They didn't need to spend much effort to hide everything. But now, I don't know how long she'll stay here this time. If the dangerous months come again, Dugu Mabao pondered for a long time. I keep feeling that she seems to have sensed something. If she can't personally witness you and Lan Zhao recovering your divine bodies, she probably won't leave so easily. On the surface, she said that she came this time to help Su Li, but after meeting and talking with her, Dugu Mabao knew that this wasn't her only purpose. Diwu Zhangzi frowned. This is troublesome. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2097. That time in Dugu Mabao was already extremely dangerous, and it definitely couldn't happen a second time. However, with their current situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to condense a divine body. Dugu Mabao was silent for a moment and said, I'll take care of it. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Liwei looked at the heavenly square medicine cauldron that was once again filled with flying ash and sighed helplessly. I failed again. This was already the 4th time she had failed. During these few times of refining pills, she had always been very cautious and careful, and every time, she would seriously learn from the previous failure. However, it was useless. The result was still failure every time. Even this time, she herself felt that there should be no problem. Lines had even begun to appear on the pill, but it was always a little short. Where exactly is the difference? Chu Liwei crossed her arms and rested her chin on one hand. She stared at the heavenly square medicine cauldron in front of her with a solemn gaze. The process of refining pills these few times kept replaying in her mind. She thought about it bit by bit, but she still didn't know where the problem was. After such a long time of high concentration, her mind and strength were consumed extremely quickly. She gently rubbed her temples. Rong Xiu said, take a rest first. Chu Liwei nodded. It wasn't a solution to continue like this. If she didn't have enough energy, the result would be the same even if she tried countless times. Of course, more importantly, the medicinal herbs she had were only enough for her to refine one more time. If she used them up, she would have to go back. But she didn't plan to leave the Red Moon Desert now. She walked to Rong Xiu's side and set up a barrier to isolate the terrifying heat. Then she began to cultivate quietly. Rong Xiu let Shui out. Go play by yourself. Roar! Shui let out a joyous howl before her snow-white, sturdy figure quickly disappeared from their sight. Those people were all resting now, and no one cared about it. It could be free now. When Chu Liwei heard the commotion, she thought of something and asked in her heart, Dumpling, Zichen, do you want to come out for a walk? Although the cultivation environment here could not be compared to that of the Peach Blossom Cove and the Yuntian Tower, it had the advantage of being spacious and sparsely populated. Sure enough, right after he asked, Dumpling immediately raised her hand excitedly. I want to go out. She had swallowed too much Tianlei some time ago. Now that she had all the strength in her body, she didn't know where to use it. Chu Liwei smiled and released Dumpling. Remember to come back when you're done playing. Dumpling happily pounced on her. Just as she was about to kiss her, she suddenly felt a chill at the back of her head. She quickly looked up and met Rong Xiu's indifferent eyes. Dumpling chuckled and squeezed out a big smile. She obediently stopped what she was doing and changed to a flying kiss. "You? Then I'll go now." Chu Luiwei pinched her chubby little face. "Got it? Just don't go too crazy." Dumpling nodded vigorously. Just as she was about to turn and leave, she suddenly thought of something. She rolled her eyes and smiled. "Zichen, this is a rare opportunity. Why don't we have a fight?" Not long after she finished speaking, Zichen's figure slowly appeared. There was still no expression on his handsome and cold face. "Okay." Chu Luiwei looked at him in surprise. Strange. Zichen had never been interested in these things. She didn't know what had happened to him today. Why did he agree to fight with Tuanzi? Perhaps it was because he felt that there were no outsiders here, so he was more relaxed? Dumpling didn't think so much. When she saw Zichen agree so readily, her eyes lit up with excitement and she rubbed her palms together. "If you lose, you have to acknowledge me as your big sister." She still clearly remembered that she had been suppressed by him in the wind separation cave. Today, she had to get it back no matter what. Chu Luiwei held his forehead helplessly. It had been so long, but this girl still remembered the big sister thing. She was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan and had the most noble and purest bloodline. Countless demonic beasts in the world would follow her lead. But she still wanted to be Zichen's big sister. If Zichen was just an ordinary three-eyed eagle, there would be no need to fight. But the key was that Zichen had a part of the great phoenix dragon's bloodline flowing in his body. He was connected to Mao Zhen's bloodline and aura. If Dumpling fought against him, wouldn't it be equivalent to fighting against Mao Zhen? But the great Phoenix Dragon clan had always been on equal footing with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. No matter what, Zichen wouldn't admit defeat easily. These two would probably have a conflict in the future. Zichen looked at Dumpling condescendingly and said indifferently, "It's not too late to talk about it when you can do it." Dumpling snorted softly. With a tap of her toes, she transformed into a ball of reddish-gold flames and flew out quickly. Zichen cupped his hands respectfully at Chu Luiwei before following her unhurriedly. The two figures quickly disappeared from sight. Chu Luiwei watched them leave and only retracted her gaze after a while. She wasn't worried about their safety. After all, this was Debao's territory. Usually, no one would come here. Even if they really caused trouble, it shouldn't be a problem. After resting for a while, Chu Luiwei felt that she had finally adjusted her condition and planned to try one last time. If it still didn't work this time, she would have to think of another way. Chu Luiwei stood up and clapped her hands to shake off the sand on her body. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Chu Luiwei paused. The sand under her feet began to flow at an astonishing speed. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2098. Chu Luiwei immediately became alert. What's going on? With her as the center, the sand was flowing towards the surroundings. Soon, the ground beneath her feet caved in, and Chu Luiwei's body uncontrollably fell downwards. She felt that something was amiss, so she took a deep breath and flew to the side. However, just as her feet landed on the sand dune, the same thing happened again. The sand in the previous position suddenly stopped moving, and the sand under her feet flowed towards the surroundings again. Chu Luiwei felt uneasy. She changed 2 more positions and found that it was the same. The coarse sand seemed to be attracted by some kind of power, forming a strange whirlpool on the ground. No matter where she went, the whirlpool would follow her. Rong Xiu frowned slightly, and in a flash he came to Chu Luiwei's side. His long arm wrapped around her slender waist. Then, a golden flame gushed out from his other hand. The flame quickly formed a boundary, sealing the whirlpool below. Chu Luiwei stood in the air, looking down at the situation below. Under the golden flame's seal, the sand no longer flowed outwards, and the whirlpool gradually dissipated. In just a moment, everything returned to its original state. Rong Xiu landed on the ground again with her. This time, the whirlpool did not appear again. It was as if what happened just now was just an illusion. However, Chu Luiwei knew that it was not so. Su Li quickly went forward and asked, Are you okay? Chu Luiwei shook her head gently. Only a few whirlpools appeared, and she did not feel any threat. However, this was obviously not normal. What happened just now? Su Li furrowed her brows and looked at the burning golden flame. Rong Xiu raised his finger, and the flame quickly flew back. Facing Su Li's question, Chu Luiwei fell into silence, and then shook her head gently. I don't know either. It wasn't her first time in the Red Moon Desert, but she had never encountered such a situation. She looked at Rong Xiu. Did you feel something? Rong Xiu reacted very quickly. Before she could figure out what was going on, Rong Xiu had already made his move. She couldn't help but feel that perhaps Rong Xiu had sensed something. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes, and they were deep. He shook his head slightly. No. I just felt that there was something wrong with the situation. There seemed to be some strange power surging below. But as soon as I made my move, all the fluctuations and aura dissipated. I don't know what it is exactly. Chu Luiwei pursed his lips. Rong Xiu's strength was above hers, so it was normal for him to sense the danger before her. If even he said so, then it would be really difficult to know what was down there. Maybe I should ask Dabao and the rest. Thinking of this, she was suddenly startled. Why didn't Dabao and the rest come out when such a strange situation was discovered in the Red Moon Desert? As soon as this thought appeared, a familiar voice sounded in her ears. Little you, It was Dabao. Chu Luiwei turned around, but found that Dabao didn't appear. From the corner of her eyes, Su Li's expression didn't change, but Rong Xiu hugged her waist tightly. It seemed that only the two of them could hear Dabao's voice. Chu Luiwei suppressed the fluctuations in her heart and listened quietly. What happened just now was just an accident. You don't have to take it to heart. Chu Luiwei's lips moved. She didn't think it was an accident, but since Dabao said so, she naturally didn't ask any more. You can continue to refine medicine at ease. Here, no one can hurt you. Dabao's voice was indifferent, but it carried a powerful aura and pressure that couldn't be disobeyed. Chu Luiwei felt a little relieved. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and she nodded gently. She knew that Dabao would definitely know her response. Sure enough, Dabao's voice disappeared after that. The desert seemed to have returned to its usual calmness. Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu looked at each other, then looked at Su Li and comforted her. Mr. Su, don't worry. It's not a big deal. Su Li saw that her expression seemed to be much more relaxed, and her heart also calmed down a little. But when she thought of the scene just now, she still felt a little strange. That's good. This kind of situation shouldn't happen again, right? Chu Luiwei paused. It shouldn't happen again. Actually, she wasn't sure, but since Dabao said so, she shouldn't be too worried, right? She let out a long breath and walked towards the heavenly square cauldron. Anyway, she had rested enough, so she might as well try again. Perhaps she could succeed this time. She stood in front of the heavenly square cauldron and placed one hand on it. She was about to take action when she suddenly hesitated for a moment. A reddish-gold flame gushed out from her palm and poured into the heavenly square cauldron. Looking down from above, a transparent flame was burning in the middle of the cauldron. The outer circle was surrounded by reddish-gold flames. As Dumpling continued to open her meridians, her strength continued to increase. The flame that Chu Luiwei could summon also became more powerful day by day. In the past, it could barely compete with the transparent karmic fire. But now, it was faintly showing signs of catching up. Chu Luiwei recalled the few times she had refined pills just now. There were no problems in the beginning, but several times, she failed at the last step of condensing the pills. She had a bold idea in her heart, but she didn't know if it would work. Thinking of this, she held her breath and concentrated. Then, she put the herbs in one by one. With the previous experience, she was now handling these herbs with greater ease. Her series of actions could be said to be like moving clouds and flowing water. Su Li watched from the side and couldn't help but praise. I thought that her first refinement was already outstanding enough. I didn't expect her to be able to do even better. Every time Chu Luiwei refined pills, there was an obvious improvement compared to the previous one. This time, From a bystander's point of view, it was even more pleasing to the eye. It was said that celestial physician emphasized talent. Now, it seemed that it was true. At the beginning, it was obvious that Chu Liyue's actions were still a little jerky. But after a few times, her proficiency and sensitivity had almost surpassed all the physicians that Su Li had seen before. Some celestial physician might not be able to do what she did in their lifetime. This could only be explained by the word talent. When Rong Xiu heard this, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. An extremely faint smile flashed across the corner of his eyes. But this smile quickly disappeared. His gaze silently fell on the spot where the vortex had disappeared, and a frosty look flashed across his eyes. At the same time, the hearts of the three people under the lake were in suspense. Diwu Zhangzi frowned and looked at Dugumabao with a worried expression. "Debao, isn't the dangerous month already over? Why did that happen again just now?" Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2099. Dugumabao's face darkened as he closed his eyes. "I don't know either. Logically speaking, that thing shouldn't have appeared at this time. Maybe it's because the dangerous moon lasted for too long this time, so there's still some influence left. But we've already eliminated all those forces previously. Why is it still like this?" Diwu Zhangzi was still confused. Dugumabao fell silent. Lan Xiao, who hadn't spoken for a long time, suddenly snorted. 10,000 years have passed. No matter how strong the seal is, there will be signs of loosening. Besides, didn't Lingxiao College already? He didn't finish his sentence, but the other two knew what he meant. He raised his eyebrows and lay back down. Anyway, the following days won't be peaceful. The dark and cramped cage fell into a long silence. The air seemed to have frozen, cold and stagnant. After a long while, Diwu Zhangzi said, "No matter what, luckily, Debao acted in time and you didn't notice anything. The moment before Rong Xiu acted, Debao was already one step ahead." Dugumabao shook his head. "She's always been smart and definitely wouldn't be unaware. Especially today's incident, which was too sudden and strange. She'll definitely be suspicious. She came here this time to help Lan Xiao and Diwu Zhangzi recover their divine bodies. Naturally, she would be more cautious when faced with such a situation." Lan Xiao said lazily, "She'll know sooner or later. Don't tell me you think you can hide it from her forever?" Dugumabao was silent for a moment. "At the very least, we have to wait until she becomes a venerable god." A day passed. Chu Liyue put the last ingredient into the heavenly square cauldron. She stared at it and carefully controlled the flame. When all the medicinal effects started to merge, she made up her mind. Condense. The transparent karmic fire surrounded the center, and a fist-sized pill quickly condensed. Immediately after, Chu Liyue quickly activated the force in her body and controlled the reddish-gold flames to surge up and completely surround the pill. As the reddish-gold flames spread, the first pattern appeared on the elixir pill. Chu Liyue was delighted, but he still didn't dare to be careless. That was because there was a time before when veined patterns had already begun to appear on the pill, but he still failed in the end. She didn't dare to relax until the very last moment. As the two layers of flames burned, the pill gradually shrank. Not long after, the second pattern appeared on it. The origin power in Chu Liyue's body was rapidly depleting. At this moment, she couldn't help but rejoice that she had enough origin power stored in her body. Otherwise, if this trend continued, it would be very difficult for him to last until the end. Su Li watched from the side and clenched her fists nervously. The previous few times, he had not been able to hold on to this stage. Maybe, I'm really going to succeed this time. While Chu Liyue was concentrating on refining the soul-consolidating pill, Dumpling and Zichen had already started. Boom! A reddish-gold fireball flew out and went straight for Zichen's face. His handsome and cold face was calm as usual. With a slight tilt of his body, he dodged the fireball. Bang! The fireball ran all the way and directly hit a sand dune. In an instant, sand and dust flew everywhere. At the same time, a howl suddenly sounded. Roar! A snow-white figure jumped up from behind the sand dune. A few scattered flames were still burning on its buttocks. Shwe shwe. Dumpling was stunned and widened her grape-like eyes. Why are you here too? Shwe shwe frantically rolled around in the sand, trying to extinguish the flames. However, the flames were too powerful, and this method didn't work at all. In the end, Shwe shwe directly froze its entire body to barely extinguish the flames. Sensing that the burning sensation had finally disappeared, Shwe shwe shook its body and shook off the layer of blue ice around it. It turned around and looked at its butt, and was instantly enraged. His originally round and chubby buttocks were actually burnt black in several places. The charred fur around it was still wrapped in fine ice shards. It looked very pitiful. Shwe shwe trembled. Ow ow. What did she mean by it was here too? It was clearly here first, okay? It was just tired from running one round and found a place to rest, slack off, and enjoy a carefree life. Who knew that just as it fell asleep, its butt would be burned by a ball of fire? Dumpling tiptoed and saw Shwe shwe's pitiful appearance. She immediately stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. Ahem, Shwe shwe, I really didn't do it on purpose. Don't be angry. Look, you're so powerful. These superficial injuries aren't very serious to you. You'll definitely recover after a period of rest, right? Shwe shwe looked at the culprit with grief and indignation. Its face was full of complaints. Its fur. It took so much effort to take care of it. It would take a long time for it to grow back. It thought that it wouldn't have to go back in such a sorry state after coming to the Red Moon Desert this time. Who knew that an even fiercer one would come? Shwe shwe almost fainted when it thought about how it would have to look like this for a long time. How would it survive in the future? Dumpling looked at it and felt very embarrassed. So she put one hand on her waist and pointed at Zichen with the other. Just now, it was because you dodged too quickly that Shwe shwe suffered. If you didn't dodge, it wouldn't be like this now. Zichen's brows moved slightly. Since we're fighting, it's normal for me to dodge. If there was anyone to blame, they could only blame Dumpling for attacking too quickly, or Shwe shwe for reacting too slowly. Dumpling snorted. You're still talking about it? We've been fighting for so long. I've always been the one attacking, and you've always dodged. You've never taken the initiative to attack. This fight is boring. Shwe shwe, ow. Weren't we discussing compensation for me? Why are you talking about your fight again? Even if both of you have the bloodline of ancient divine beasts, you can't treat other divine beasts as beasts like that. Zichen said calmly. You haven't used your full strength, so I naturally won't attack. In other words, Dumpling could only barely exchange blows with him if she tried her best. Dumpling gasped when she heard that. Just you wait, I'll show you the power of your big sister. Bam, bam. 2 balls of reddish gold flames gushed out of her eyes. A shocking aura erupted from her body. Zichen narrowed his eyes and spread his feet apart. He put one hand behind his back and raised the other hand slightly, accumulating strength. Shwe shwe? Are they going to fight again? What about me? Shwe shwe, wait for me to subdue him and make him apologize to you. As Dumpling spoke, she clasped her hands together. The flames around her kept gathering and finally condensed into a reddish gold feather. Go. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2100. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden feather flew out rapidly. It went straight for Zichen. At the same time, a purplish gold stream of light emanated from Zichen's palm and covered his entire hand in the blink of an eye. At first glance, it looked like it was covered in a layer of purplish gold scale armor. A suppressive aura that was not inferior to Dumpling's was emitted from his body. Zichen's body had fused with the great phoenix dragon's bloodline power. Moreover, he had Mao Zhen's support. Once he made a move, it would naturally be extraordinary. He raised his hand abruptly and moved, heading straight for the golden feather. It looked like he really intended to fight head-on. In the blink of an eye, the golden feather had already flown in front of Zichen. The surrounding space was almost torn apart by the astonishing power of the golden feather. Zichen clenched his hand into a fist and punched out violently. Boom! The two forces collided fiercely. Following this loud sound, the violent and vigorous forces began to fight wildly, and the aftershocks continued to spread to the surroundings. Two extremely intense and bright colors intertwined rapidly in midair, dazzling everyone's eyes. The sand on the ground was affected and flew into the air. Shui Shui, who was left to the side, did not have time to react before it ate another mouthful of sand. Its snow-white ball was finally covered by a layer of yellow sand. Shui Shui slowly lowered its head and looked at its dirty appearance. It could not help but grind its teeth. These two people were really going too far. Unfortunately, its reaction did not attract the attention of the two people on the other side. Tuanzi looked at him with bright eyes, and her heart was thumping excitedly. Zichen was finally willing to make a move. Previously at the Peach Blossom Dock, Zichen's strength was slightly higher than hers. Therefore, she was not convinced and always wanted to find an opportunity to compete with him. Moreover, now that she had broken through to the 5th meridian, her chances of winning were even higher. Naturally, she could not miss this opportunity. As the two forces continued to clash, the golden feather was gradually worn down, and the purplish gold scale armor on Zichen's fist also began to fade gradually. They were almost evenly matched. Seeing this, Dumpling hurriedly threw out another flame. Zichen looked up slightly, and a black feather also flew out. Bang! Dumpling's reinforcements were intercepted halfway. She was stunned for a moment, then an even stronger fighting spirit surged within her. So this was Zichen's real strength. That's great. Only then would the fight be interesting. However, just as she was about to continue attacking, she suddenly heard a subtle and strange sound. There seems to be a sound under the sand? Tuanzi was stunned and looked at the ground. Only then did she see that the sand seemed to be flowing towards the surroundings at an extraordinary speed. This is... She took a step forward curiously. Zichen's pupils shrank. Be careful. But it was too late. Just as Dumpling's foot landed, a vortex suddenly appeared below her. An extremely strange force surged up from below, entangling her feet and pulling her down. Ah! The next moment, Dumpling's figure disappeared from the spot. Zichen immediately retracted his hand. The force backfired, causing his qi and blood to surge. However, before he had time to think about this, he chased after Dumpling and jumped into the vortex. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were swallowed up one after another. Shui Shui realized something and immediately jumped up to look down from above. Under the vortex, there was a thick darkness. It was like an eye coldly looking at the world. Digression 60 clock. Remember the mobile version of the website. Chapter 2101. In the heavenly square cauldron, the reddish gold flame was burning fiercely. A crimson elixir was floating quietly. The last line was slowly being drawn. Chu Liuyue's forehead was constantly sweating, but before it could fall, it had been evaporated by the high temperature of the flame. Because she had used up too much energy, her lips were pale without a trace of blood. At this time, the passage of time seemed to be particularly slow. The sky gradually darkened, and the cold wind swept from the depths of the desert, brushing past her body, and the chill seeped into her bones. In front of her was the hot fire, and behind her was the cold wind. Waves of weakness came from her body. Chu Liue secretly bit the tip of her tongue, and a sweet and fishy taste spread between her lips and teeth. The sharp stabbing pain kept her extremely clear-headed. At this time, the last line on the elixir finally appeared completely. An extremely rich medicinal fragrance burst out from the cauldron. Chu Liue slapped the cauldron with her palm. The soul-concentrating elixir flew up in an instant. The reddish gold flame gradually peeled off, followed by the transparent karmic fire. When the last bit of fire dissipated, Chu Liue jumped up, and her aura swept across, and put the soul-concentrating elixir into the jade box that had been prepared long ago. Bang! The jade box was closed, and Chu Liue fell back to the ground. She looked at the jade box in her hand, and could vaguely feel the fluctuations of the elixir inside. Soul-concentrating elixir, an elixir at the level of a grand doctor. The success of this elixir meant that she had officially stepped into the threshold of a grand doctor. The rich medicinal fragrance in the air did not dissipate for a long time. Chu Liyue's heart beat quickly, and the blood in her body seemed to be boiling. She raised the jade box in her hand, turned her head, and smiled brightly at Rong Xiao and Su Li, who were standing not far away. It's done! At this time, the night was dark, and there were no stars or moon in the black velvet night sky. Beside her, in the transparent cauldron, a strong and bright flame was burning silently. The sparkling flame fell on her face, which was like a good porcelain jade. A pair of obsidian-like eyes were bright, and her red lips were raised in a bright smile. Congratulations, you! Rong Xiao's thin scarlet lips were slightly raised, and there was undisguised appreciation in his eyes. Although he already knew that she would succeed, he still felt happy when he saw her happy expression. Su Li also gave him a thumbs up and sighed sincerely. You are truly amazing. Without any preparation, he directly used this opportunity to break through to the rank of Grand Physician. From the first time she tried to refine the soul concentrating pill until now, it had only been over 10 days and she had only failed 4 times in between. If this news were to spread, it was unknown how many people would be envious, jealous, and hateful. Chu Liyue put away the cauldron. She thought for a moment and said, "Actually, although the level of this soul-concentrating pill is quite high, it isn't too troublesome to refine." Being able to succeed this time was also due to some luck. Su Li was speechless. Isn't this troublesome? Even until now, she still couldn't remember the order in which the herbs were put in. Chu Liyue smiled and nodded. The soul-concentrating pill had a lot of herbs, but the refining technique was actually very simple. Among the prescriptions she had seen, it could only be ranked in the middle. Rong Xiao's sword-like eyebrows raised slightly, but he didn't speak. He had long noticed that Chu Liyue's understanding of these prescriptions was a little skewed, and now it seemed that it was true. The soul-concentrating pill could be regarded as a very precious medicinal pill among the Grand Physician level. No matter from which aspect, it was definitely not simple. Even those experienced Grand Physicians, if it was their first time refining the soul-concentrating pill, they would rarely succeed in such a short period of time. But, now, there was obviously no need to say these words to her. Chu Liyue didn't notice the slight change in expression on Rong Xiao's face, and looked at Su Li with a smile. "Mr. Su, with the soul-concentrating pill, it will be much easier to help you reconstruct your body. You just need to find a suitable skeleton of a 9th-stage martial artist and you can..." Suddenly, her expression changed, and she quickly turned her head and looked into the depths of the desert. Almost at the same time, Rong Xiao's eyes also sharpened. Seeing this, Su Li's heart instantly surged with an ominous premonition. "What's wrong?" Chu Liyue didn't speak, but her brows were tightly knitted. Just now, she lost contact with Dumpling and Zichen. No matter how she called in her heart, she could no longer receive any news from the two at this time. Since she contracted with Dumpling and Zichen, this was the first time such a situation had happened. Chu Liyue felt a chill on her back. After the magical beast and the human race contracted, they were connected to each other. Even if they were thousands of miles apart, they could still sense each other's existence. But now, it seemed that there was an extremely sharp knife that cut off the invisible connection between them. It was clearly fine just now. At this moment, Rong Xiao suddenly held her hand. His palm was warm and dry, and he held her hand tightly with strength and gentleness. Obviously, he had already sensed Chu Liyue's nervousness. The ironing warmth surged from his palms, bringing with it a reassuring strength. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and said word by word, "Dumpling and Zichen? I can't contact them." Rong Xiao's brows moved slightly, and he immediately understood Chu Liyue's meaning. He gently squeezed her hand and said, "Don't worry. This is the Red Moon Desert. They won't get lost." Chu Liyue nodded. If they really couldn't find them, they could only ask Debeo and the others for help. Swoosh. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. The few of them looked up and saw a yellow and white figure running towards them at high speed. It was Xue Xue. When it came close, Chu Luiyue saw Xue Xue's appearance clearly, and her expression changed. Its white and fluffy hair was covered with a layer of yellow sand. It looked dirty, and some parts were even knotted. But this wasn't the most important thing, because there were several black burn marks on Xue Xue's butt. Xue Xue you, just as Chu Luiyue was about to ask, Xue Xue quickly pounced over and bit the corner of her skirt. As it pulled, it let out a low whimper. Chu Luiyue suddenly realized something. Where are you taking me? Wait, your injury was caused by dumpling? That aura was simply too familiar. Xue Xue nodded frantically and was still pulling desperately. Rong Xiu suddenly said, it knows where dumpling and Zichen are. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Really? Rong Xiu nodded slightly and looked at Xue Xue. Just lead the way. Ow! Xue Xue responded and turned to run forward. Chu Luiyue asked Su Li to return to the heavenly square cauldron, and then chased after Xue Xue with Rong Xiu. The cold night wind brushed past their faces. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu ran at full speed, and the two figures quickly disappeared into the thick night. Wonderful book house, you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.